I think we could spend a week on this by itself, and I want to get as much discussion in as possible.
And we only have an hour and a half.
Yeah. So then let's just jump right in. So what I've done here is I've put the King James Bible, the American Standard Bible, and Levitikon kind of side by side. I've taken it verse by verse, and so each verse has its own cell, its own row. Where there is something different, it is highlighted in Levitikon. So we start off right at the beginning, verses 1 through 3. I'll read the King James and I'll read the Levitikon. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by him, and without him was not a thing made that was made. So that's the King James. In the Levitikon, that same little chunk reads, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and God was the Word. This one was with God at the beginning. That's it. So the part that's missing is all things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was not made. So this is kind of typical of a Levitikon difference, that there is either a word or a half a sentence missing, or in a lot of cases a whole verse just kind of missing. What I am hoping to do with this exercise, and not necessarily here today, but I'm hoping to eventually come to a point where I understand what the theology of the Levitikon is specifically, in contrast to the theology of the Gospel of John, or I should say the theology of the primitive Gospels as opposed to the canonical Gospels. Is it possible? I don't know, and you probably have an opinion on that, but anyway, so let's jump right in. Does anybody have any thoughts on the differences here in this first 3 verses? I'll start. Actually, I'll tell you what I think. Because, yeah. The part that is talking about creation, in the canonical gospel, we're talking about Christ's role in creation. All things were made by him, and without him, not anything was made that was made. The elimination of Christ from the creation part of this, because this is the only cosmology in John's gospel. This is it. Now, was this one of those sections that was illegible and eliminated? I don't think so.
Not very much.
Yeah. So the idea of, if you look at it from a Gnosticism point of view, which obviously I do, the Christ figure is never explicitly part of the creation story. So maybe this is a reflection of that. Maybe this is a kind of Gnosticizing influence in the gospel, in the primitive gospels.
Well, I think it's, I mean, not to contradict you, but
no,
it's definitely that is a Gnostic way of looking at it, because Christos just means the anointed, so yes, but more importantly, where they're receiving their information and their ideas about the high Christology and the origins of the universe are Platonic, so it's a Platonist statement.
right.
Because there's
Right, and they're saying
one,
logos there instead of
right. It's the, and God was the Word, so God was the logos. So clearly, the logos is an emanation.
There's also the thing that the logos here is already included by the very first statement.
Yeah.
It just doesn't go much farther and simplify it by the elimination of the other things.
So it's a non-demiurgical logos.
Yeah. Also, I meant to point out in the first verse, the reason why it's highlighted is because there's a substantial enough word change to highlight it, but I don't think it changes the meaning necessarily of what's happening in that thing. That's just something that I did. If there was a significant enough difference that the words were different enough that I thought it merited highlighting. Yeah. So there are lots of things in here where the words are different. Like, for example, the word magician, which gets used a lot for Jesus in this gospel. I didn't necessarily highlight those because I think that's just a colloquialism, essentially, not really something that's intended to change the meaning of the text.
Yeah.
Or it could be.
Yeah,
well,
as opposed to sorcerer.
sorcerer,
which
yeah.
would have been a naughty word.
Yeah, right. Okay, and so here's one that's, I think, just a little bit of a change, but worth mentioning. And the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, parenthetically, and we beheld his glory, the glory as the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. And then the Levitikon says, he was made flesh and lived among us, and we saw his glory, a glory as an only Son of the Father, full of grace and truth.
And.
Yeah, as an only Son of the Father, implying that there are more than one only Son of the Father. Interesting. I don't know if we necessarily need to discuss that one because we were short on time. Okay, that's the first gospel.
It definitely points in the direction of our theology.
Yeah, how so? Go ahead and elaborate.
It points to the uniqueness of the indwelling spirit in every person. So not only is this not there is to say that yes, there might be, it leaves this kind of weird third view, which is that yes, Jesus is the Christ and he is the Son of God, but he's a Son of God, meaning of course that there are other children of God.
Well, no, this is coming from a layperson's point of view, but the way I read it, as an only son of a father, as in, because he's talking about his flesh, could he be referring to Joseph, as in he's an only child?
No.
I would see it, as an only son of a father as a kind of relational description.
Yes.
That
that's
something
right.
would be like,
I
you
see.
could compare
Like an
it
only
to.
son.
Yeah, it's a clear analogy.
Yes.
Yeah, and so in French, it would have been, it would have said very explicitly of a father, du père, as opposed to le
The
père.
father, yeah.
It would have, because in French, especially coming out of the Latin Vulgate, it would have said le père, the father, or something like that. So, because
So
it's very
relational.
rare to
Mhm.
talk about the Almighty, the unmoved mover, in those terms, especially with the small f and everything. I mean, it's quite unusual.
Mhm. Yeah, that's true, the capitalization too, and I preserved that from your translation.
Now, some of the capitalization I preserved exactly the way it was, except for things that in French are normally not capitalized and they are in English. Just so
Yeah.
you're clear on that one.
Like je, which is normally capitalized,
Not capitalized.
not capitalized, and
And
it is
it
English.
is in English, yeah, that kind of thing.
Right, right.
But I try to keep everything else the same.
Mhm.
Father, for these differences in the opening verses, is your personal theory that the Levitikon is an early Gnostic redaction of the Gospel of John floating around, or is your personal theory that the Levitikon is the first version of Gospel of John written down?
I will tell you at 12:20.
Okay. I'm just wondering because famously the opening verses of John are thought to be one theory is that it's an independent hymn.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
Okay.
I'll tease you with that. We'll come back with it later. All right. Oh, here we go. This is going to be a problem.
Just pause. Talk about the yourselves.
I don't know. It's probably the Wi-Fi here.
Wasn't there another
Okay.
room?
All right. Here we go. Jesus saith unto her, Woman, what have I to do with thee? Mine hour is not yet come. His mother saith unto the servants, Whatsoever he saith to you, do it. Okay, so this is the story of the wedding at Cana. Jesus is about to perform a miracle. Okay, he's about to perform his first miracle in his ministry, the turning of the water into wine. Those two lines, I think, are very significant in their absence in the Levitikon. The Levitikon says, and now the wine ran out. The mother of Jesus said to him, they do not have any wine at all. Skips directly to the miracle. He does it. And he does it as a magical act. So let's actually jump down also a little bit. There were 6 stone pots in this place containing about 2 or 3 measures. Jesus said to them, fill the pots with water and bring them closer to me, and they filled them to the top. And having touched the water, which is added in Levitikon, it does not exist in the canonical Gospels, he said to them, you can now carry them to the head waiter, and they took them, and it's wine. Miracle. okay? So, I view this as, no, and I'm not gonna get to 12:20. I view this as in 2:4 and 2:5, 2:4 and 5, in the King James version, or in the canonical versions. I see this as an addition. I see a lot of these things that are missing in Levitikon, quote unquote missing in Levitikon, I see as additions in later versions. I think it could very well be possible that somebody took a canonical version of the Gospel of John and did some very selective editing in a way that was coherent. I think that somebody with some skill in textual criticism could certainly do that, but I don't think that's the case here. So here's an example of that, where in the canonicals it seems as though there is explanatory addition that would have made it more palatable, maybe. I don't really know much about the culture of the time. So there's kind of an explanatory bit. There are better examples of it coming up. So bear with me.
There's stuff in the canonical gospel that, there's lots of things to point to say that the gospel was written for Greeks or to a Greek audience, because they turn around and explain Jewish things that would have been common
Right.
to a Jewish audience that would have needed no explanation.
Right, yes.
Right?
And those are also present in Levitikon. Rabbi, which means teacher,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. And so it's in there. But the interesting bit about having touched the water does not exist in the canonicals, but does in the Levitikon, I believe may have been removed because it seemed a bit like magic, which, okay, maybe it actually was, Jesus is referred to as a magician in Levitikon.
But there's other bits where, like the mud, and the eyes, and there are other miracles and things that have a physical counterpart.
Yeah.
That remain.
Yeah,
In
right. And I don't know, maybe this is something specific that people would have recognized as a magical act?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like the stories in the infancy gospels.
Yes.
The mud sparrows and stuff.
Yeah.
I certainly do like that Levitikon has Jesus being nicer.
Yeah, he's less
To his
rude to his
mother.
mom.
He's less rude to his mom, yeah. Woman, what has that to do with
that's
me?
the way I took it.
Yeah.
That's absolutely the way I read it.
Yeah.
There was all this nonsense about woman this and woman that, and it's not there.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
And
maybe that's making it more palatable to a particular audience, that it was unseemly to have Jesus Christ ordered around by his mother, so they added a couple of phrases where he goes, "No, you don't you tell me what to do."
Yes.
Or unseemly to have Christ kind of be a dink to his mother's.
Yeah, you could.
Yeah,
You could
well, but
kind of
he's not, if you read, the way I read that, the verse
Sorry,
3 is,
Jesus, we're just gonna clean you up here.
yeah, the way I read verse 3, his mother isn't ordering him to do anything. He just says, hey, they didn't
There's
have any
no more
wine.
wine. There's no more
Can you
wine.
believe there's no more wine? And he just says, no, I got this.
It's very Jonah to know when we don't have enough wine.
Yes.
That is true.
And fitting that it was married.
Okay,
so-
I wish we could talk about all these things for hours, but
Yeah.
we gotta go. This is the scourging of the money changers in the temple. So he found in the temple, this is the King James, and he found in the temple those that sold oxen and sheep and doves and the changes of money sitting. And when he had made a scourge of small cords, he drove them out of the temple and the sheep, yada, yada, yada. Here is how it goes in Levitikon. This is very entertaining. And he found the sanctuary and those who were selling oxen and sheep and doves, and the money changers seated at their tables. And he reproached them for their impiety, and he left that place and began to preach. The end.
He's much less exciting.
He does not kick anybody's ass. And
I don't have time for this shit.
yeah, he's like, dude,
Nobody got time for that.
cut it out. I'm out of here. I got more important things to do. So this is the Jesus of the Levitikon as opposed to the Jesus of the canonical gospel. Which that story in the canonical gospel always seemed a bit out of place to me anyway.
Yes.
Why is Jesus? I mean, I understand
Why
he's
is
trying to make
Jesus saying
points.
Turn the other cheek, and then he
Yeah.
goes and starts whipping people on it.
Right, with a knotted piece of rope, like he ties
It's quite
knots in a
specific,
rope.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
specifically to hurt people,
Yeah.
and I mean, that doesn't seem to me like the same message that Jesus
Well,
was
Jesus
preaching.
of Levitikon is Canadian.
Canadian Jesus.
I'll
look at you very.
He waggled his eyebrows at them and left to preach.
If we can rewind 2 seconds, if you can go up.
Yes.
One of the things that's eliminated is the, the whole, what we believe now, or what people attach to it, the prophecy about his death and resurrection. That's.
My hour is not yet come, yes.
Well, just, go down a little further to the thing where he's talking about, keep going. But he spake of the temple of his body, 40 and 6 years this temple building, will thou raise it up in 3 days. That's
Yeah.
a reference, or what we take now to a reference of the resurrection,
Yes.
which doesn't appear
Right.
later in the Levitikon.
Right.
Right.
So this is here, I think, for the sake of consistency with that. It's either consistency with that, or it's to de-emphasize the physicality.
Yes.
Of
Well, okay, and that's something that is interesting in the Leviticon that we'll talk a
Yeah.
bit more about too.
Father, can you just sort of back
Yeah.
up to the
This or further?
So, no, there in the money changes.
which I should quickly note is consistent with the focus on the divine with the early community of the beloved disciple over the
Mhm,
human.
mhm.
2 rows up, sorry. No, hang on. I caught something before. Sorry, can you get back up to the
Manifested
wine
as
pots?
science. It's pretty awesome.
Which one is that one in?
Yeah, sorry, 2:6 is kind of, you haven't highlighted it, but it is kind of interesting. They make a point of saying in the Canonicals that they're water pots after the manner of the purifying of the Jews,
Oh, you're right,
containing
actually.
2 or 3 firkins apiece.
Thank you
and
for
it-
picking up that. I think that's just one I missed.
It doesn't mention that in the Leviticon.
You're right.
I've always thought the wedding at Cana is interesting because it happens like a verse or something after the John baptizing in the river, right?
Yeah.
So we've got John baptizing in the river, and then we go immediately to a piece of sketch comedy involving Jewish water purification, which is in some sense the same kind of ritual.
Yes.
And Jesus saying, well, okay, let's just not worry about the water thing, let's just get drunk.
Well, but then also overtaking Dionysian cults
Mm-hmm.
by saying, look at what I can do. Not only do I give wine, I make water into wine.
Right.
So I take the Jewish water purification and I double you. I raise you.
We're gonna get through 4 chapters.
True. Sorry. Go.
No, it's great. I love it. I wish we could do this
Yeah.
all day. So in the Canonicals, now when he was in Jerusalem at the Passover, in the feast day, many believed in his name, and he saw the miracles which he did. But Jesus did not commit himself unto them, because he knew all men, and needed not that any should testify of man, for he knew what was in man. Okay, and so the Levitikon says, and some of them understood in teachings and believed in his name. But Jesus, for his part, was not entrusting himself to them, for he knew all men. I interpret that as largely the same. And then in addition, he knew everything about them, and he possessed all the sciences. Nowhere in the Canonicals, a very interesting addition. And then finally, he did not need anyone to testify concerning man, because he himself knew everything there is to know about the outside and inside of man. All right? That may or may not be just something that got left out because we get it. We knew that what was in man.
Yeah.
But
Although that would be unusual because the canonical does spend an awful lot of time telling you things that you kind of already get.
yes,
Right.
And with the Gospel of John, with the canonical Gospel of John compared to the rest of the the Synoptic Gospels, all this stuff happens to Jesus.
yeah,
In the canonical Gospel of John, all this stuff happens to Jesus because Jesus is in control.
mm-hmm.
Mm.
And this is what
And he knew all the science.
Yeah, and he knew the stuff that, you know what I mean, that there's this kind of divine power thing that says, you know what, everything is going exactly as I have planned. You know what I mean? And I think that, I think the Levitikon combined with in the former portion, this is just my interpretation,
Mhm.
former portion is emphasizing the divine over the, or at least that kind of, that sense, whether, if maybe not a divine power, certainly a knowledge, or certainly, that Jesus is a badass.
Yeah. I would like actually to take a minute to talk about that word sciences. Do you have any thoughts on it as the translator?
there's nothing I can say except that that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, yeah.
But if in a
Ways,
first
I
or second
mean-
century context, it wouldn't mean what we think of it as
No,
meaning now.
no, it would mean sort of like, how do you say that in English? The abilities
What was the exact word? Was it like techne or what?
Science?
in French?
It was in French, you're right, I was
Yeah.
thinking ancient, I'm sorry.
Okay.
It was
Worth-
Science.
Yeah, well, worth thinking about.
It might be interesting at some point to reflect, not now, but to reflect on what's that word in French used, what are the Greek words that French word is used to translate? There's probably a few Greek words.
Technical ability.
Technical ability, right.
Yes.
Techniques, technical knowledge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he knew all the magic.
Yeah,
He knew all
that has
magics,
a definite
yeah.
magical reference.
I think
in-
so.
In that time period.
I think so, yeah.
Ample
Okay,
on it.
here's a few minor things.
Oh, I don't think this is minor at all.
Okay,
Yeah.
and Jesus answered and said unto them, Verily I say unto thee, except a man be born again, he cannot see the kingdom. This happens twice. It's born again versus born from above. But I think other scholars have hashed this through significantly, that born from above is more accurate.
But the difference between the two is see and know.
Yeah.
You know, that unless you're born from above, unless you
Yeah,
have
okay.
that thing,
Thank you.
which I would like to do a transformation, you cannot know it.
Yeah.
It's more that you cannot see it, you cannot know it.
I can't do it,
Yeah, so the funny thing is in the Greek, it depends what the Greek is.
Yeah.
Because there's like oida in Greek means know, but it kind of means behold as well. So there's a lot more fuzziness between seeing and knowing, I think, in Greek than Greek's very specific about several different kinds of knowing, but some of those kinds of knowing are about beholding something which can be seen in image,
Okay.
right?
Which in French would be connaître,
Right.
to know, like
Okay.
you know someone. So there wouldn't be a choice in
Right.
French.
Right.
But to English, it's very clear to me that means no, in a no, I know you, Bishop Tim Mansfield kind of
Right.
way. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think it's an interesting difference, but it exposes the difficulty of trying to work out what the
Yeah,
hell they were
indeed.
talking about.
But
Well, I
it's-
like my version the best.
But the French is very specific. I mean, because there is a different, savoir, which is a
Right.
knowledge of,
Like kennen and wissen in German, kind of.
and to see, yeah, is completely different
Right.
and wouldn't really work.
But there's a sense in the way some of this is used in Greek. Jeffrey, maybe I'm getting this wrong, and maybe you can correct me. But I get the sense sometimes that with oida and ido in Greek, that it's kind of it's knowledge, but it's a knowledge of something regarded internally, like it's the receiving an inner image and knowing something. It's not a technical kind of knowledge because I know how to do it.
Right.
It's not just an experience I've had, but it's something I've kind of received and I know it from the seeing, kind of. But it's an internal seeing, not an external seeing.
But for me, looking at it from the English to the French, I see that no matter how you boil that down, because I
Mhm.
did actually look at Greek translations,
Okay.
just so that I could understand sometimes if it was different. And it's very clear to me that that's, I'm not going to say intentional, but it's clearly what was going on in terms of not so much what the Levitikon is saying, but that the English is incorrect.
Yep.
Because to see the kingdom of God implies this kind of supernatural movement where you enter the kingdom of God. In other words, if you don't do this, you're not going to go to heaven.
Right.
You're not going to see paradise.
Yeah.
That's my understanding of it, growing up as a,
Totally. Same.
right. So from the mainstream point of view. Yeah.
Well,
so whether or not it's accurate from the Greek to the French, it's totally not accurate.
Yeah.
Connotation in English. So
Right. Completely.
it's a win-win.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that kind of segues to my point about the next difference. And no man hath ascended up to heaven, but he that came down from heaven, even the Son of Man which is in heaven. And I'm going to skip down to 17 also because it's related. For God sent not his Son into the world to condemn the world, but the world might be saved through him. So here we're talking in the Levitikon, no one has ascended into heaven but he who descended from heaven, the Son of Man.
Uh-huh.
For God did not send the Son into the world to judge the world, but that the world might be saved by him. So there's two things that I want to point out in each of these things. So no one has ascended in the ascent and descent, right?
Right.
And this is my thing at the moment because I'm studying it, but the idea of an ascent vision experience that was, I think, central to classical Gnosticism, and at least in a lot of its forms. That you would have a visionary experience, very much in keeping with apocalyptic Judaism, with which would become Merkaba mysticism, the Egyptian Book of the Dead, Hermetic ascent workings that would have been practiced at the time. So that's the one thing I wanted to mention. The second thing, theurgy, absolutely, theurgy. So the second thing I wanted to mention was even the Son of Man which is in heaven, and then in this one just the Son of Man. I don't necessarily know if that's worth talking about, but just think. Okay, so the reason why I think it's related to the next paragraph is, so God did not send the Son into the world to judge the world, but that the world might be saved by him. In the canonicals, it's through him the world might be saved, and it's by him in this paragraph. Again, probably some nitpicky thing.
That might have been just words, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? That's the economy of words.
Prepositions are hard.
It's
Yeah,
true,
Yeah,
yeah.
they're very difficult
Yep, Okay.
especially English and French.
All right, so let's move on. Oh, unless anybody has any comments on any of those.
Sorry, going up to the being born again, that's a very interesting difference actually, because he keeps emphasizing being born from above, right? And he's not making, in Greek there's a pun on being born again and born from above, and that seems to be lacking in, I mean, you can't tell because we don't have the Greek and I don't speak Greek, but that's why Nicodemus isn't understanding him. But
Yeah, no, there are lots of scholars who have done that a lot of service, so
But-
I don't want to spend a lot
Oh,
of
sorry,
time.
but is that missing from the Levitikon? Is he just emphasizing born from above? Because
Well, I mean,
As
that's how
opposed to
I'm
born
reading it.
again?
Born anew or born again, yeah.
Well, I think that the canonicals are translating it wrong, is my point. I think it's supposed to be born from above.
Okay.
Which is really interesting because that means that that's actually really important to this.
Yeah.
Because that means that
It implies that,
it
that descent.
predates, that translation, that correct translation predates the modern scholarship, the
Yeah.
contemporary scholarship that
Right.
has come to that conclusion.
That's
Yes.
why I just jumped right up.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, that is why I.
We shouldn't have skipped that, yeah, that's
Okay.
that's huge.
Yeah, that's another one of the reasons why I assume this
So-
is a pre-redacted version of,
Yes.
okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
In the canonical, for everyone that doeth evil hateth the light, neither cometh to the light, lest his deeds should be reproved. And in the Levitikon, for everyone who does evil hates the light and does not come to the light for fear that his deeds will be exposed. So reproved versus exposed,
Yeah.
thoughts?
I think, well, exposed is nicer,
Sure.
because that's what light does.
Mm-hmm,
Less judgy.
yeah,
It's less judgy, which,
Yeah.
which we like.
yeah.
More Canadian Jesus.
More Canadian.
That's also closer to the synoptics, where everything that is hidden will be brought to light instead of the
Yeah.
individuals of judge, which again could also indicate that it's an earlier version.
Mhm.
I also like it because it's not, you mentioned at lunch, God the Father, the scolding old man.
Mhm.
Okay, well, in my conception of sin and wrongdoing, it's sort of self-punishing. So there's no need for reproval. All we're exposing it, it's done.
Yeah, you're aware of it now, you can do something about it or not, that's up to you.
So I think
Yeah.
that's a very critical difference between the two.
Okay, let's move